Still monitoring events from Uganda, opposition politician Bobi Wine, a pop star whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, says the United States ambassador was turned away from his home by soldiers during an attempted visit. Bobi Wine says his home remains cordoned by the military and he was not being allowed to leave. He previously said his life was being threatened following Thursday's election, which saw Yoweri Museveni win a sixth elected term amidst reports of election irregularities. Now, joining me to discuss the intrigues trailing the Ugandan election is international affairs analyst Liborous Oshoma. Thank you very much for joining us, Liborous.
My pleasure.
Now, what is the regional impact for peace and stability in East Africa, and what do you make of all of what is happening? Bobi Wine is still under detention after contesting elections. The social media is still shut down. The government says they're doing it to prevent his supporters from gathering. Is this sustainable, and is this part of modern African democracy?
Yeah, for some time now, Uganda has been, a rallying force for, AU and other allied forces in East Africa, because it's a country surrounded by warring countries, but it's the only stabilizing force. But with the outcome of the election and the irregularities and the force, coupled with the brute force by the Ugandan military, it's almost certain that if care is not taken, that peace that had been enjoyed by Uganda and then that stability that is provided in that region will soon give way to a heavy crisis. But be that as it may, apart from the AU and the East African Union, every other bloc and social NGOs that monitor that election complain about irregularities, but the AU and the East African Union simply gave the election, a pass mark and said that they were peaceful. The process was peaceful, and people went about their normal duties. And
this is in direct contradiction to what the United States, the European Union, are saying. They say they are going to investigate claims of irregularities and human rights abuses. The United States is one of the top donors to Uganda, which is highly dependent on foreign donors to survive. But there's also Ugandans on the other side are saying, the government of Uganda is saying they're meddling in our domestic affairs. And does the US, looking at what is going on in their own home country, have the moral authority to lecture other countries on how to conduct their internal affairs and elections? To some extent, I think it is Africans that actually, give the American government the leeway to meddle in their affairs. If you don't accept donors from them, if you don't accept he who feeds you controls you. That's
if you don't accept aids from them, they won't want to matter. They don't want to meddle in your affairs. No matter how much of irregularities also were, allegedly noticed in their election, so-called, democracy of the world. Well, I think that Africans should actually find a way of evolving, a system of government as distinct from what the US is trying to force down their throat. With what had happened in America and the Trump election, it is certain and obvious that democracy as touted by the Americans is not truly and indeed what it should be. Africa, we have a mixed system here. You have a monarchy system, and then you have countries also, being compared to practice democracy.
So it shouldn't be a copy and paste model.
It shouldn't be a copy and paste.
Evolve to have an African model.
Yeah, because of the aids that is being extended to them, so they are being dictated to on how they should, and so wanting to retain that monarchical structure, vis-a-vis a democratic environment will breed the kind of violence and high-handedness that we are seeing happening in Uganda.
we do understand that countries do have their own independence and don't want other countries and unions to meddle in their affairs. But the African Union, I mean, the statement you made earlier that they gave the elections a pass mark, it seems they live in an alternate universe. People have criticized the African Union as an old boys club. They will hardly have criticisms against one of their own. Bobby Wine has been on house arrest for almost a week now. There was a massacre in a district in Uganda, massacre. 4 people died in post-election violence, total silence. And we say, okay, we want African solutions to African problems, but the African Union is not really doing much.
African Union, I have also at some point criticized African Union, and also I believe in most cases that the regional blocs are more stronger than even and more competent, permit me to use that word, than the African Union in as far as issues of strengthening internal democracy and finding solutions to the problems of Africa is concerned. And like, to borrow your word, the African Union, to me, it's like an all boys club. And Uganda in that region also is one of the highest contributor to the African Union peacekeeping missions. Yes. And so I think against that backdrop, the African Union would not want to rock the boat in terms of the contributions that they are also getting.
And also they host a huge amount of refugees.
Exactly. And so, but I think the way African Union is going, if care is not taken, this silence and then this attitude of giving a pass mark even when there is none, for me, I would see it as the silence of the graveyard. And if care is not taken, it might give way to crisis, because not everybody, like you did observe in your news also, not everybody is happy with the process. Even though they are happy now that the internet has been restored, but the country has a population of, predominantly young people.
Yes.
And on these young people also supports majorly the opposition. Museveni is going for his sixth term now in office. And we're talking about democracy. And these are not the tenets of democracy, that the kind of tenet of democracy
even
that African Union would want, to preach in as far as Africa is concerned. And it takes my mind back to 1979 when Obasanjo was to relinquish power. He said in his book, My Watch, that most African leaders prevailed on him not to hand over. That, look, we operate a monarchical structure here, and don't just copy, the American style of democracy. So against that backdrop, I think that what the African Union is just trying to do is to support one of theirs. Any way you look at it, let's just support one of our own. But if it doesn't, if the outcome is not favorable in the long run, then it's another big problem that African Union will have to face. And so the earlier they begin to, just like ECOWAS did with Gambia, the earlier they begin to address those problems, especially the East African unions, the earlier they begin to address those problems, the better for them.
Now, finally, Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi, Bobby Wine, has been under detention for almost a week. Yesterday, the American ambassador tried to visit his residence. It was turned back. Their armed operatives, he said, has run out of food, and is appealing to the international community to prevail on the Ugandan government to, lift this house arrest. What options are open to the Ugandan government, knowing that they have cards on their deck?
What they are trying
stability, icon of stability in the region, the refugees they're hosting, and
I think what they're trying to do here is trying to ensure that he doesn't assess, the judicial process, because he had 15 days from the date election results are announced to approach, the court to query the outcome of the election. And so what the government is trying to do here is to restrict, to ensure that he does not have access to information and documents, and then maybe just a few days before that time, and then because their defense is that they are trying to ensure maintenance of peace. Even pressmen were harassed and beaten, and the police chief was bold enough to say that they were beaten for their own good, that they don't want them to go to areas that were dangerous. And I find that and the fact that African Union and the Eastern Bloc would be silent on all of this, for me, I find it very nauseating. What the only option that is available to the Ugandan government now, is won the election, is to allow a peaceful process. Let the judiciary, have the opportunity to look at the process if he truly believes that he won the election.
Liborous Oshoma, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on News Central now. It was a pleasure.